One cool evening, Lucia sat quietly in her room, knitting with a small smile on her face. The calm atmosphere was interrupted when Duke Hugo entered and noticed the scarf in her hands. Curious, he asked what she was making. Lucia looked up at him cheerfully and explained that she was knitting a scarf for Damien. Hugo stared at the soft, fuzzy scarf in silence for a moment. To him, it looked more suitable for a small child than a young boy Damien's age. Still, he thought Damien would probably wear it all winter simply because Lucia had made it for him. The thought left Hugo feeling oddly conflicted. Part of him even pitied the boy. Quietly, he reminded himself to ask the guard assigned to Damien how the boy had been doing lately. As Hugo watched Lucia focus carefully on her knitting, another thought lingered in his mind. Damien had already left, and even the troublesome fox was gone, yet Hugo still felt as though Lucia's heart was not completely his. Lucia noticed him sitting beside her earlier than usual and asked if he was retiring for the evening already. Hugo replied that he had matters to handle the next day before pulling her gently into his arms. Lucia was slightly surprised by the sudden affection. While holding her, Hugo found himself bothered by something he could not easily shake off. Lucia had apparently told Damien stories about her childhood, yet she had never shared those same memories with him. He wanted to believe that she had opened her heart to him, especially after he had already revealed some of his own secrets to her. Even if she could never fully love him back, he at least wanted proof that she trusted him more than anyone else. Lost in those thoughts, Hugo kissed her. When they pulled apart, his face carried a faint flush while Lucia simply looked at him calmly. Trying to steer the conversation naturally, Hugo asked whether she had learned knitting as a child. Lucia smiled and admitted that her mother had tried to teach her long ago, though she had never been particularly skilled because she did not pay much attention back then. Hugo then carefully asked about her childhood, mentioning that she had once said she lived alone with her mother before entering the palace. Lucia immediately noticed that Hugo had been asking about her past far more often lately. She confirmed that it had indeed been just her and her mother during those years. As she answered, Lucia suddenly misunderstood the reason behind Hugo's curiosity. Since Hugo had grown up without a mother, she assumed he simply wanted to know what a normal relationship between a mother and child felt like. Completely unaware of Hugo's true intentions, she sympathized with him inwardly. Meanwhile, Hugo struggled internally with whether or not he should directly ask the question that truly bothered him, what Lucia had been called during childhood. Fidgeting awkwardly, he finally tried to approach it indirectly. He hesitated before asking what her mother usually called her when she was little. Lucia thought about it for a moment before answering warmly. She explained that her mother rarely used her actual name. Instead, she would affectionately call her things like my lovely child, little pumpkin, or sweetheart. Hearing that answer, Hugo felt his face heat up in embarrassment and disappointment. Once again, he had failed to learn the one thing he truly wanted to know. Trying to move on, Hugo asked what Lucia had been doing earlier that afternoon while gently holding onto her arm. Lucia explained that she had been organizing preparations for the party she planned to host in a few days. She also mentioned that Kate had something she wanted to ask her. Elsewhere, in the imperial palace at the capital, Crown Prince Hesse was interrupted in his study when a complaint document was delivered to him. Marquis Delling had officially filed charges regarding Roy Croton. As the prince skimmed through the unusually lengthy report, he could barely hide his amusement. The complaint mainly centered around Roy severely injuring several knights after they had attacked him together. Hesse found the situation ridiculous. From his perspective, Roy had simply defended himself after being ambushed. Closing the document with irritation, the Crown Prince sarcastically questioned whether there was some hidden rule in the Knights' Code that made ganging up on one man honorable. The butler nervously clarified that the knights were supposedly more offended by Roy's insulting language than the actual fight itself. Hesse immediately understood the deeper meaning behind the complaint. In reality, the knights likely held resentment toward him personally rather than Roy. Nearby, Roy himself merely watched the exchange with a faint smirk. At the same time, Fabian spent his day collecting rumors circulating throughout the capital. He entertained himself by reading increasingly absurd stories about the Duke's estate, including one rumor claiming that a demonic summoning circle existed beneath the mansion. Amused, Fabian prepared to organize everything into a report. However, his mood shifted when his subordinate handed him another document regarding an author they had been secretly monitoring. Fabian quickly opened the report and recognized the name Norman, remembering that she was acquainted with Lucia. As he continued reading, Fabian's expression immediately turned serious. According to the report, Norman had recently received an unexpected visitor at her home in the north. When she opened the door, she was shocked to discover a cloaked woman standing there carrying pastries from a nearby bakery. The mysterious woman politely asked if she could come inside and suggested they share lunch together. Norman welcomed her in without suspicion. Once inside, the woman removed enough of her disguise to reveal herself as Countess Falcon, wearing a subtle smile as she stepped into Norman's home. Why did Countess Falcon visit this estate again? And this wasn't even her first visit, Fabian thought, his expression turning serious. Apparently, the Countess is a fan of that author, his subordinate explained. That can't be the only reason, Fabian thought, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the letter in his hand. That woman is definitely planning something. I can feel it. Countess Falcon carried a disturbing reputation wherever she went. She had been married 3 times, yet none of her husbands were still alive. But that eerie history alone wasn't why Fabian disliked her so intensely. Countess Falcon herself was dangerous. I just can't stand her, he thought bitterly, crushing the letter in his hand. I don't even need a reason anymore. Still, it would be wiser to keep watching her movements for now. I should include this in the report. After making a few additions to the document, Fabian handed it over. Good work, he told his subordinate before dismissing him. Elsewhere, Prince Hesse called out calmly, Sir Croton. Roy immediately turned his attention toward the Crown Prince. I won't criticize you for roughing up a few nights, Prince Hesse said casually. If anything, I'd say you did well. He even gave Roy an approving thumbs up. Roy looked oddly satisfied by the praise. The official standing nearby, however, looked completely horrified. Your Highness, how can you say that? Not only are you refusing to scold him, you're actually commending his actions? No one died, Prince Hesse replied calmly. Those men started the fight and lost. It would be unfair for them to demand compensation now. Then his gaze shifted back to Roy. But why would you say something like that? Roy frowned slightly. What do you mean, Your Highness? You called those knights the Marquis dogs, the prince answered. I never said that, Roy corrected immediately. I said they were mutts licking at their master's feet. The official stared at him in disbelief. Somehow, that sounded even worse. Prince Hesse covered his face with one hand and sighed deeply. That means exactly the same thing. Of course they attacked you after hearing that. Roy remained completely unbothered. I don't understand why they found it insulting. I merely stated the truth. A knight is his master's dog. The room fell silent at his blunt words. If one chooses to serve as a loyal hound, Roy continued coldly, then he should commit fully to the role. Wag his tail when his master appears and obey every command without hesitation. His sharp gaze shifted toward the official. Those men started provoking pointless arguments, so naturally I responded. Prince Hesse looked at him carefully. Is that how you see yourself as well, Sir Croton? Of course, Your Highness, Roy answered without hesitation. I am His Grace's dog. If he commands me to bark, then I bark. He paused for a moment before saying flatly, woof. Woof. The room instantly became awkward. He actually barked. Prince Hesse thought, completely stunned. Then, unable to hold himself back any longer, the Crown Prince burst into loud laughter, slamming his hand against the desk. That man is insane, the official thought nervously. Or maybe that dog truly is mad. Either way, I should avoid provoking him in the future. After finally calming down, Prince Hesse wiped the tears from his eyes. You heard him yourself. Send a formal response stating that Sir Croton never intended to insult anyone. Yes, Your Highness, the official replied before hurriedly leaving the room. Silence settled over the study once again. Prince Hesse leaned back in his chair thoughtfully. I envy Duke Turan, he admitted. To have such a loyal knight by his side. His expression slowly darkened afterward. But the Duke continues to isolate himself in the north and rarely visits the capital. I at least expected the Duchess to appear once. It had already been nearly a year since their marriage, and over 2 months had passed since the new year. Yet neither of them had shown themselves publicly. Are the rumors really true? The prince muttered, suddenly slamming his fist onto the desk. Is he truly hiding her away because of her beauty? What made the matter stranger was that Duke Turan had never behaved this way with any of his previous lovers. Prince Hesse let out a frustrated sigh. I know Princess Vivian isn't exactly famous for her beauty, but the rumors still bother me. The Duke rarely left the north, making it difficult to learn anything concrete. After an expensive and time-consuming investigation, the only thing they discovered was that the Duchess occasionally snuck outside disguised as a servant girl. Beyond that, there was almost nothing. Eventually, the investigation had been abandoned altogether. Besides, she isn't an enemy, the prince thought. There's no need to pry too deeply into the affairs of an ally. I'll meet her eventually when they visit the capital. Still, the image of a duchess secretly wandering outside dressed as a maid amused him. That really does sound like something my sister would do, he thought with a faint smile. At least she seems interesting. Later that afternoon, deep within the northern woods, Sir Philip prepared to leave his cabin. You're heading to the slums again to treat patients? A voice asked from behind him. Philip turned to see Anna climbing the steps. I didn't even mention it, yet you guessed correctly, he said with a chuckle. I've been studying under you for months now, Anna replied. You visit the slums once every week. Philip looked at her with quiet approval. Your desire to learn is remarkable. Even I find it admirable. Anna smiled faintly while gripping her medical bag. I may be getting older, but I still can't stop wanting to learn. I'll work hard today and absorb as much knowledge as I can from you. Then I look forward to working with you, Philip answered warmly. Not long after, the two arrived at the village and began treating patients one after another. Take these herbs after every meal, Anna instructed gently. You must continue taking them consistently. She moved on to another patient. This medicine isn't very strong, but... Suddenly, loud shouting nearby interrupted her. Anna flinched and turned toward the commotion. This foolish girl says she ate 3-leaf mugwort, an older woman shouted in panic at Sir Philip. 3-leaf mugwort? Anna's eyes widened immediately. I didn't do it on purpose, the frightened maid defended herself. I thought those were the dried herbs you prepared. How could you possibly confuse them? The older maid snapped angrily. Do you not have eyes? It's not my fault you left them in the kitchen, the younger maid cried desperately. Sir Philip stepped in calmly. What symptoms are you experiencing? Oh, doctor, the older woman said anxiously, I'm worried because the herb is poisonous. Ever since she ate it, she hasn't had her monthly bleeding. Anna froze the moment she heard those words. The symptoms were exactly the same as Lucia's. Philip, however, looked surprisingly unconcerned. That sounds rather convenient to me, he remarked casually. You silly girl, the older woman shouted at the maid. Do you want people calling you Baron? Anna suddenly rose from her seat so abruptly that it startled the patient beside her. That's exactly the same symptom the Duchess has, she realized in shock. That night, Anna sat across from Sir Philip, quietly discussing the events that had unfolded in the village earlier that day. Steam rose gently from the tea between them as the atmosphere in the cabin grew increasingly tense. It was about the patient who consumed the 3-leaf mugwort, Anna began carefully. I've never encountered symptoms like those before. But judging from your reaction earlier, it seems this isn't unfamiliar to you. Philip lowered his teacup slightly, listening in silence. I knew the herb was capable of stopping bleeding, she continued, her brows furrowed, but I never imagined it could interfere with a woman's monthly cycles as well. How is something like that possible? Philip remained thoughtful for a moment before answering. Earlier that afternoon, he had questioned the girl's mother directly. How much of the herb did she consume? He had asked. She only ate it once during a meal, the woman replied anxiously. And when did your daughter first begin her monthly cycles? I believe sometime last year. Philip nodded slowly. So she wasn't consuming the plant regularly? No. Then there is no reason to panic, he reassured her calmly. The effects are temporary. Her monthly cycle should return next month. The woman had immediately sighed in relief. Returning to the present conversation, Philip explained, cases like this are uncommon, but not unheard of. Many commoners struggle to find food, so they occasionally eat unfamiliar plants without understanding their properties. Fortunately, the symptoms usually fade with time, and there are rarely any lasting effects. Anna listened carefully, though the uneasiness on her face did not disappear. Then, have you ever heard of a case where the monthly cycle stopped completely after consuming the plant? She asked quietly. Philip paused mid-motion, his expression sharpening. That is an interesting question, he said slowly. Have you encountered such a patient? I have, Anna admitted. The patient never experienced another cycle afterward. She mentioned that she had taken the herb continuously for a prolonged period. And who is this patient? Philip asked directly. Anna hesitated. Should I tell him? She wondered uneasily. Philip was still being monitored closely by Duke Hugo. But despite the Duke's suspicion toward him, Anna knew Hugo would never tolerate a truly dangerous man within the dukedom. If Philip had genuinely posed a threat, the Duke would have already dealt with him long ago. Still, revealing the Duchess's condition felt dangerous. Unable to meet his gaze, Anna finally spoke. To be honest, I came to you because I wanted another opinion regarding these symptoms. As the Duchess's personal physician, there was little need to explain further. Anyone intelligent enough could identify the patient immediately. Philip's eyes narrowed slightly. May I ask, he said carefully, did this patient consume the mugwort around the time of her first bleeding? Anna's eyes widened. Then you really do know about this condition, she exclaimed. Does that mean you also know how to treat it? Fortunately, Philip answered calmly, I do. My goodness. Anna abruptly rose from her seat, unable to contain her relief. The cure I've desperately been searching for was right in front of me this entire time, she thought. Philip continued questioning her. How did the patient first begin using the herb? She was still a child, Anna explained. It seems no one properly educated her about the changes occurring in her body. Knowing only that the herb could stop bleeding, she used it out of ignorance. And for how long? I was told she consumed it for approximately 6 months. Afterward, her cycles disappeared entirely. Anna slowly sat back down, anxiety returning to her expression. Is there truly a way to cure her? Philip folded his hands together before answering. There is, he said, but the condition for treatment is rather unusual. Anna stared at him intently. What condition? Philip's voice turned serious. The woman must have known a man and lost her virtue within 2 years of developing the symptoms. Anna froze. The condition itself was already strange enough, but the cure sounded even more unbelievable. She lowered her gaze quietly. For her Grace, this was not simply a medical issue. Her dignity and reputation were deeply tied to it. Even discussing such matters openly was dangerous. Anna clenched her fists beneath the table. But if this truly was the only cure. Gathering herself, she finally spoke again. This patient was recently married, she said carefully. And she shared her first night with her husband after the wedding. Does that mean she can still be cured? She can, Philip replied without hesitation. Anna's eyes widened in shock before relief quickly overtook her expression. Then we must inform her Grace immediately, she said, rising again. She'll be overjoyed to hear that a remedy exists. However, Philip calmly raised a hand. The treatment itself is a secret method passed down within my family, he explained. The exact formula is written in a notebook inherited through generations. Unfortunately, I do not currently have it with me. Anna's expression stiffened. It is stored elsewhere, Philip continued. I'll need to leave temporarily in order to retrieve it. Will it take long? Anna asked anxiously. Could I accompany you? I'm afraid not, Philip answered. The location has been kept hidden for generations. Anna quickly lowered her head. Forgive me. I became too impatient. There's no need to worry, Philip said with a small laugh. I promised I would bring back the remedy, and I intend to keep that promise. Then his expression sharpened slightly. But until then, you must not inform the patient. It would only cause unnecessary anticipation. Anna nodded slowly. When do you believe you'll return? At most, within 7 days. The moment she heard that answer, relief spread across her face once more. 7 days, she repeated softly. Then I shall wait patiently. After bidding him farewell, Anna left the cabin with renewed hope in her heart. But the moment the door closed behind her, the atmosphere inside changed completely. Sir Philip sat alone in silence for several seconds before laughter suddenly escaped him. At first it was quiet, but it quickly grew louder, echoing beyond the walls of the cabin. It's not over yet, he muttered between heavy breaths. There's still another opportunity. His eyes darkened with ambition. Time passed. Following the sudden death of the former duke and the rise of the new duke, Philip's own fate took a dramatic turn. One day, he awoke inside a dungeon cell, abducted by unknown men without warning. Cold chains rattled softly as he lifted his head. Standing outside the bars was the new ruler of the duchy himself, Duke Hugo. The young duke stared down at him with an unreadable expression. Old man, Hugo said coldly, I've heard you possess knowledge about producing offspring. Tell me. I searched every corner of that cursed room and found nothing, Hugo said, his voice low and restrained. His eyes remained fixed on Philip, who had been silent until then. So, you discovered the hidden chamber, Philip finally replied. The room that contains the truth behind the Turenne family's bloodline. I did. Hugo let out a humorless laugh. Quite an entertaining secret. His gaze darkened as he continued. The daughter the late Duchess carried would eventually have been expected to bear my child. What a grotesque fate. Philip's expression stiffened. My future wife never even had the chance to be born, Hugo added coldly. I examined every document in that room. The Duchess was required to give birth to a son, so the family could never rely on an ordinary woman. But after my mother died, did they finally settle for someone insignificant? He narrowed his eyes. You hid her away because if she gave birth to a daughter, that child could not be raised here. Isn't that right? Philip remained silent, but Hugo could already tell he had guessed correctly. If the Duchess gave birth to a girl, Hugo continued, the child would be declared dead and raised elsewhere. Considering the age difference between us, my father would never have left me alone. He would have arranged for me to marry a woman capable of giving birth to a daughter who would eventually become my son's wife. His voice grew colder with every word. But that arrangement would make the woman carrying Turenne blood nothing more than a mistress. Any son born from such a union would be illegitimate. My father would never tolerate a stain like that on the Turenne name. Hugo paused before revealing the conclusion he had reached. So I came up with another possibility. My wife, after giving birth to our daughter, would conveniently die from illness or some unfortunate accident. Then the daughter raised elsewhere would return as my second wife and bear me a son. He stared directly at Philip. Am I wrong? Philip could not answer. His silence alone confirmed too much. I regret to disappoint you, Hugo said flatly, but every one of my half-sisters is dead. I will never father a son. Philip's heart tightened. If Hugo ever learned the truth about the three-leaf mugwort, there was no doubt he would destroy it completely. He would never allow the Turenne bloodline to continue. Worse still, he might kill both mother and child if he discovered a woman carrying a Turenne heir. But Hugo was still speaking. I can still father daughters, he said bitterly. And your disgusting family would not hesitate to force me to use my own child the same way. Rage finally broke through his calm expression as he slammed his hands against the prison bars. So tell me, old man, how has this cursed bloodline survived for so long? His voice echoed through the room. Because I refuse to leave behind another monster to continue the Turan name. Philip tried to remain composed despite the fear in his eyes. If Hugo discovered the real role of the three-leaf mugwort, everything would end. The Duke already despised his family enough. He avoided forming attachments to women and kept everyone at a distance. If he learned the complete truth, the Turan lineage would disappear forever. And Philip could not allow that. Hugo lost patience. He grabbed Philip by the collar and struck him repeatedly, demanding answers. Speak already! Blood stained Philip's lips, but he still shook his head weakly. I cannot. It is my family's secret. Hugo threw him back onto the floor. Then you can rot here for the rest of your life, he said coldly. Speak before I cut out your tongue. Broken and trembling, Philip finally spoke. The woman must consume the blood of the child's father for more than a year, he muttered painfully. And the Turan patriarch himself must claim the woman before she can bear his child. For the first time, Hugo looked genuinely disturbed. He covered his mouth slightly, disgust flashing across his face. Philip lowered his eyes, hiding his relief. The Duke had believed every word. The lie had been absurd, yet Hugo accepted it instantly because of how monstrous he already believed his own family to be. And he would never realize Philip had fabricated the entire explanation. After that day, Hugo treated Philip as though he no longer existed. Perhaps he had concluded that no woman could bear his child unless he willingly allowed it himself. Philip used that opportunity to continue his schemes. He gathered orphaned girls and secretly prepared them, feeding them three-leaf mugwort while teaching them how to please the Duke. The Turan men had always been consumed by violent impulses, whether bloodlust or desire, and Philip intended to exploit those moments of weakness. Then war broke out. To Philip, it was the perfect opportunity. During the chaos of battle, he smuggled women into Hugo's tent. Blinded by violence and exhaustion, the Duke barely remembered their faces. But the plan repeatedly failed. For conception to occur, the same woman needed to remain with him for an extended period, yet Hugo quickly lost interest in each of them. As the failures piled up, so did the number of women Philip had to silence. When the war finally slowed, Hugo gradually regained control over his violent urges. After returning home, he stopped touching common women altogether and spent time only with elegant noble ladies. Even Philip could no longer manipulate the situation as before. If only one daughter of the former Duke had survived, Philip thought bitterly. I could have arranged for her to bear Master Damien's child. But every woman with Turan blood was gone. The woman Philip once spared had died after giving birth to Damien. The girl raised to become a future duchess had died in a riding accident. Hugo's own wife had been killed alongside her unborn daughter. To Philip, Damien's birth itself felt like a miracle. Yet if Damien failed to find a bride, the Turan bloodline would finally come to an end. Then, in the middle of his despair, a woman who fulfilled every condition appeared without any effort from him at all. Anna. To confirm his suspicions, Philip lied to her about a certain condition required for the medicine. Her reaction told him everything he needed to know. Soon, he thought with satisfaction, your future bride will be born, Master Damien. The thought made him smile quietly to himself. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Lucia sat in her chambers when a maid approached carrying a bowl. My lady, it's time for your medicine. Oh, thank you, Lucia replied politely. Every 2 days without fail, medicine was delivered to her room. Anna must have been working tirelessly to prepare it each time. Lucia stared nervously at the bowl. I just hope it isn't as bitter as before, she thought. Carefully, she took a sip. Then her eyes widened in surprise. Vanilla? She looked down at the bowl again in confusion, unable to believe the taste. Lucia requested Anna's presence later that day. Once the physician arrived, Lucia carefully lifted the bowl of medicine that had been prepared for her and studied it for a moment before speaking. Anna, the remedy you prepared for me today tastes different from the ones I've taken before, she said quietly. Anna maintained her composure. Yes, Your Grace. It is a new concoction. You created this medicine yourself? I did, Anna replied without hesitation. Lucia looked at her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she reached for a folded sheet of paper resting on the table and slid it toward Anna. I once took an interest in medicinal herbs, Lucia said calmly. So I spent some time studying them myself. Anna unfolded the paper. Her face gradually stiffened as she read through the contents. These are names of medicinal herbs, she murmured. Lucia watched her closely while Anna continued reading. Each of these herbs requires careful handling because of their potent properties, Anna read aloud. Combining them recklessly could be dangerous. Lucia leaned slightly forward. Then tell me, Anna. What happens if all of those herbs are mixed into a single remedy? Anna answered immediately, almost instinctively. They should never be combined. Taking them together could produce toxic effects. I see, Lucia replied, her tone cooling. Then that means you gave me this medicine knowing it could poison me. Anna's eyes widened. What? Lucia remained silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the medicine between them. In her dreams, she had once searched endlessly for a cure to her condition. No matter how much effort she devoted to it, she could never find the answer herself. By chance, she had eventually encountered a wandering physician who revealed that the treatment was a secret method passed down through generations within his family. It was not something an ordinary doctor could formulate through study alone. If Anna had admitted she received assistance from someone else, Lucia might have assumed she had somehow crossed paths with the physician from her dreams. But Anna had insisted the remedy was entirely her own work. That was what troubled her. Did you know, Lucia continued softly, that this medicine carries the scent of vanilla? She pushed the bowl slightly closer toward Anna. Anna's fingers tightened around the paper. Of course, she answered, though her voice lacked confidence. When those three particular herbs are boiled together, Lucia explained, the resulting medicine develops a faint vanilla fragrance. But it seems you didn't know that. A chill ran through Anna. What? She lowered her eyes back to the list, rereading the names with growing unease. Lucia's voice remained steady. You claimed this remedy was your own creation. So how could you not know something so basic about it? At that moment, Anna finally understood the mistake she had made. The ingredients Philip had given her were already ground into powder. She had no way of identifying the exact herbs involved. Her thoughts drifted back to the day she met him. The dosage is simple, Philip had told her then. She must take the medicine regularly, at least once a month, until her monthly courses return. I cannot administer medicine without knowing its ingredients, Anna had argued firmly. At the very least, I need a written prescription. But Philip had refused. As I said before, this cure is a secret passed down through my family. I cannot disclose its formula. Anna had been frustrated by his answer. You understand we are not discussing an ordinary patient. This is the Duchess. Then allow me to explain it to her personally, Philip had replied. That is impossible, Anna said immediately. You are not permitted anywhere near her grace. Even now, she remembered Jerome's instructions clearly. No matter how the medicine was obtained, she was to present it as her own work. Philip's existence was never to be revealed to the Duchess. Philip had tried to reassure her. I swear on my life that the medicine is harmless. If you still doubt me, test it on yourself first. It will not affect anyone without the condition. But this treatment must be taken consistently over time, Anna had countered. A few doses would prove nothing. Philip's expression had hardened then. Do you truly think I would create a remedy that endangers the patient? His voice alone had been enough to silence her. Meanwhile, the pressure surrounding the Duchess's condition continued to grow. Once every week, Duke Hugo would ask the same question. Have you found a cure? And every time, Anna's answer remained unchanged. I am still working on it, Your Grace. Hugo would simply close his eyes for a brief moment before responding calmly. I see. But Anna always felt the weight behind those words. She was the Duchess's personal physician, entrusted with an enormous responsibility and compensated generously for her expertise. Yet despite all her training, she had achieved nothing. In the end, desperation and pressure pushed her into accepting medicine whose ingredients she did not fully understand. Looking down at the bowl on the table, Anna felt overwhelmed with shame. How could I do something so reckless? She thought bitterly. How could I give medicine to a patient without certainty of what it contained? To her, the issue was no longer about serving the Duchess specifically. She had violated the very principles she swore to uphold as a physician. Finally, Anna lowered her head. I will not make excuses, she said, her voice trembling. This remedy is not my own creation. I am deeply sorry, Your Grace. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, though she struggled to maintain control. I tested the medicine on myself for an entire week to ensure it was not toxic. Lucia quietly observed her. Anna was clearly exhausted. The pressure she had endured must have been immense. Whoever gave you this remedy, Lucia said after a pause, must be someone you trust deeply if you revealed my condition to them. Tell me who it is. Anna shook her head. My apologies, Your Grace. I cannot. So the person who prescribed this medicine insisted on remaining anonymous? Anna remained silent. Lucia's thoughts returned once more to the wandering physician from her dreams. He had never seemed interested in recognition or reward either. Still, Lucia could not ignore the uncertainty surrounding the remedy. I cannot continue taking this medicine, she said at last. I do not trust something whose origins remain hidden. Anna lowered her gaze. I understand. I have committed a grave mistake. Lucia's expression softened slightly. I know your intentions were sincere. You only wished to help me. But next time, I ask that you tell me the truth from the beginning. Yes, Your Grace, Anna answered quietly. Later that night, Lucia sat alone in her room, lost in thought. There was a time when she believed she would gladly accept any treatment if it meant recovering. Back then, her relationship with Hugo had been strained, and she had cared little about what became of herself. But things had changed after Hugo finally confessed why he feared having children. Now she understood him better. Hugh is not ready to become a father, she thought. Bringing a child into the world under such circumstances would only bring pain to everyone involved, especially the child itself. Lucia gently lowered her eyes. I do not want a child who is unwanted by its father. I want my child to grow up fully loved. Hugo had spent his childhood without the warmth of parental affection. Lucia herself had grown up with an absent father. Neither of them truly understood what a complete family looked like. Yet despite that, they were trying to understand one another little by little. Perhaps that alone was enough for now. A faint sadness still lingered within her. She loved Hugo deeply, and part of her had dreamed of one day bearing the child of the man she loved. But even so, she knew the timing was wrong. If two flawed people continue trying to understand each other, perhaps we can still find happiness together, even without a child for now, she thought quietly. With those thoughts lingering in her heart, Lucia slowly drifted to sleep.
Thank you for watching this episode of our Manhwa Recap. We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of this story with us. If you loved the content, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more amazing manhwa recaps. See you in the next episode.